Hello, confident eaters. Happy Thursday. I am here with an awesome special guest today. I'm here with Jewel Hohman, who is a connection coach, and she is going to be here talking to us all things friendships, perfectionism, the power of connection, and just a little bit about Jewel. She is a future therapist, an overly certified coach, and a human connection obsessed imperfect human, like we all are, with a degree in psychology and sociology, a pending master's, and over 4,000 hours coaching on connection. Jewel combines evidence based self help and the latest friendship research to help people feel delightfully authentic in social settings and make their friendships more meaningful. And in a post pandemic world where millions are lonelier and more disconnected than ever, this conversation is urgent but mostly ignored, and Jewel's on a mission to change that. So I'm so excited to have you on today, Jewel. Can you say hi and introduce yourself a bit
Thank
more?
you. Yes, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk more with your people. Again, I'm Jewel Homan, nailed my last name. Wow, like so impressive. And I am a connection coach and a social confidence coach. And what that really means in that really long bio that I have, in the shortest way possible, what that really means is I help people connect everywhere they go and feel comfortable connecting everywhere they go, whether that is in a conversation or a new friendship or deepening a friendship. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I do. I got into this years ago, really struggling myself. I had always had social anxiety, but I didn't know that's what it was because I was also extroverted. And I was like, I don't have social anxiety. Like, yeah, sure, maybe I overthink every little thing I say and do after every event. And I'm always wondering, do my friends hate me? But I can like
Mhm.
perform, I can like go to social events. I like being around people. And now I understand that I was a socially anxious extrovert, and this was really driven by social perfectionism, trying to be perfect, say the right thing at the right time in the right way to get the right reaction from people. As I got older, I started experiencing what people in their mid to late 20s experience called the friendship gap. And it's natural, it's a part of life, but it is when you go from spending so much time with your peers, then they're starting to move across the country maybe, they're getting really involved in their careers, they are getting married, they're building their families, and then you're not spending as much time with your peers, and so this friendship gap tends to happen when we start to lose, if you will, a lot of our friendships, spend less time with our friendships, our circles get smaller. And as I was experiencing that, I was like, I do not want to feel lonely the rest of my life. Like, whether that is if I have friends around me all of the time, like I did before the friendship gap, or going forward. I'm such a nerd and I have a background in psychology research. So I dove in to really discover how I can change this for myself. And when I did, like, I knew the stats, like, I knew people were lonely. I knew loneliness had been increasing since the 1970s. I knew 1 in 4 people didn't feel like they could confide in anybody. Even before the global pandemic, where we all were isolated and alone, where we really wanted more meaningful friendships, I felt like we didn't have that. So I was aware, but when I started making this change for myself and people started coming up to me and saying things like, "How did you make these friends? Like, can I go on your girls trips?" And like, "Jewel, there's just something different about you," because I had such a confident energy that I didn't have before. And that's when I was like, okay, I need everybody to be aware of this stuff. So for those of you listening, this relates so much to your relationship with food because like when I had Amber on my podcast and we talked all about the overlap between binge eating and socializing, like the real like key ingredient, if you will, under both of those things is perfectionism. I know we'll dive more into that today, but a lot of this, although it doesn't seem like it directly relates to food, as I discovered more and more and more layers of how it does when I had you on my podcast, there really is a ton of overlap.
And I was telling Jewel before this that, like, I am just so obsessed with what she does because I think it's so needed. And when you're listening to this podcast, if you're struggling with food right now, I know it literally takes up all of your brain space. Like, that is all I thought about all day long was food and how I was gonna eat less and how I was gonna change my body. And I didn't have room to think about all these amazing goals, like what friends I wanted to have, and now I do. And so now that I've achieved food freedom, it's been one of my personal goals too, is to create deeper friendships and connections, especially as much as I love coaching so much. Like, It's me and my beautiful clients all day long alone in my
Right.
room, so it's something I have to prioritize more. But I think it's just so important to have this conversation today so people can realize too just what opens up for them once
Mhm.
they stop having this obsession around food and like all the different things that you might not think about. Like, wow, I could have deeper friendships, I could have more connection, and how that will make you so much happier than like any size clothing ever could.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I'm just really excited to talk about this today. So you mentioned social anxiety a bit. Can you define a bit more like what social anxiety is and like how it shows up for people, like what it specifically looks like?
Yeah. So, social anxiety, although the term is pretty clear, the word itself, the definition, if you will, social anxiety, our culture is like, we do not understand it. We think social anxiety is awkwardness. We think it is introversion. We think it is people that are antisocial. And this is why I never identified with having social anxiety, even though I was very socially anxious. Because social anxiety is really anxiety about how are other people perceiving me? How am
Mhm.
I showing up socially? And it's anxiety whether that's in social settings where you're around strangers, whether you are around people that you know, or even around your close friends, even around people close to you. And I was experiencing this a lot with a lot of overthinking, a lot of overanalyzing, and I was obsessed with really trying to show up perfectly, whether that was in my meaningful relationships at my job at the time or like whether I met somebody new. But this is often why a lot of clients say to me, like, oh, I'm fine around strangers. And they're like, I can like talk to a stranger, no problem. But when I'm around my coworkers or when I'm around my acquaintances, when I'm around people that I regularly see or know, I get really anxious. And again, we don't think that's social anxiety, but it is. It absolutely is. So
Mhm.
the reason why that is social anxiety is because again, it's anxiety, not to sound redundant, but it's anxiety around a social situation. However, it's the reason why it comes up in relationships where we know those people is because we feel like there are higher stakes. Oh, these people are going to see me more often. Oh, these people are going to know me and remember this mistake. Whereas a stranger, we can be like, I'm never going to see them again. It's fine. And so for me, I had anxiety all the way around, but for a lot of my clients, they will come to me and they'll be like, "I didn't realize I had anxiety in social settings," because they felt like they were extroverted, they felt like they were fine around strangers and again, like, could socially perform.
I think that is so important to hear because I totally resonated with that. I definitely consider myself an extrovert. I'm like, yeah, I can talk to anyone, no problem with that. But it's so true is when I'm around people that I think of highly of because they're my friends and I want them to like me, or I'm around like
Mhm.
somewhat new people, it comes into more of this pressure of what are they going to think about me? How are they going to view me? Does my hair look right? Does my outfit fit right? All of these things. And I think it's so important to think about, if not that it's a problem, but just like to be aware of it, of, "Oh, okay, this
Mhm.
could be different." I think so often we don't even realize that there's a different way of being in the world. Like, we don't even realize, "Oh, I thought that was just normal. Like, I thought I just everyone had this around their friends," or, "I didn't think this was something that can be changed." So I think even just hearing that, like, "Oh, like, this is something that I can change and grow and learn from," can open up so much possibility to deeper connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if someone is struggling with this, if they feel like, "Oh my gosh, I need to be perfect in these situations," what is some things that you would suggest to them? Because, we'll all say just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna try not to think what other people think of me." But how do we actually do that and just like care less about what other people think of us?
Yeah, I am so glad you asked this, Amber, and the way that you asked it too is so beautiful. And I want to like lovingly say too, part of what makes it worse is actually trying not to care about what people think. And I'll tell you why, because we care what people think and a lot of times it's a good way, right? It's like making sure if we see somebody and we're not sure if, she's pregnant or not, like that we're not going to ask. Why?
Mhm,
Because we care what she thinks and we don't want to offend that woman. So
mhm,
this is a good thing in so many ways. It allows us to be considerate, allows us to be empathetic. Like caring what people think truly at the end of the day is empathy. And it's
mhm,
being at a table and making sure that we can include somebody else in the conversation. So, one of the first things that we actually want to do is just embrace that you care what people think. The reason why it becomes a problem is because you don't know how to accept yourself and be there for yourself if they judge you. Caring what people think is not actually the problem. I love and all of my clients, they're all like just sensitive and beautiful and empathetic humans. That is a strength, and that is what we want. And just to emphasize this point further before I go into the self-judgment, I was shocked when I learned this because I had spent so many years previously trying to care less about what other people thought, trying to be like, yeah, like I'm a little badass, like, whatever, you can't touch me. Like, to be unbothered, I thought was like the goal.
Mhm.
And it really just made me lonelier. And it made the anxiety worse because then I was like, oh gosh, I do care what people think. Stop, Jewel. Like, you're not supposed to do that anymore. So there was some of that. There was also feeling lonelier, like feeling more separate from people because I wasn't there to connect when I was just so, I don't care what you think, right? So I was so shocked when I learned that the opposite of social anxiety is not confidence because I thought it was. And also, when did confidence become not caring? I don't know. But I thought the opposite of social anxiety was confidence. It's not, it's psychopathy. It's a common thing out in our culture, right? Stop caring what people think. Stop caring what people think. It's so common. But when you try to do that, basically you're trying to be a psychopath. Like, babes, that's not actually what you
Exactly.
want. Right? So, what we can do with social anxiety is to know, okay, if this person judges me, which our brain, especially those of us that have rejection sensitivity, that have had any kind of relational issues in the past with people where we've been hurt, things like that, we might really fear rejection because we really want to be a part of the group. This makes so much sense. Our brain actually lights up in the same way when we feel rejected as we do when we experience physical pain. It's one of
Mm.
the only emotions that really does that. And it's because this is so deeply wired into us, we don't want to be exiled from the group. We know we need connection from other people. The reason why you and I are here today is because our ancestors connected and we're like, all right, you take care of the kids. I'm going to go get us some food. You over there wash our clothes. I'm going to go, I don't know, like make sure that we're protected, whatever it may be, right?
Mhm.
Us working together is why we are all here. So, just to kind of recap a little bit of that for everybody, we want to know how we would cope and accept ourselves and know how to be there for ourselves. That skill right there will change your entire life no matter what you're working on. And from there, we want to build confidence in other areas. So for some of my clients, that's confidence in what they bring to a social setting. Like, oh, I bring a space for people to share and for them to feel seen and appreciated by me. That is so beautiful. Whether that is, I like am really confident in my humor, right? Just appreciating these parts of yourself. So that's a very oversimplified way of going about it. One thing that also really relates to your beautiful meditation that you have on walking through them feeling an urge
Yeah.
is also being really aware of the sensations that you have in your body for what anxiety is. Oftentimes, we make anxiety worse, whether it's social anxiety, whether it's food anxiety, whatever it may be, right? By thinking this is such a big problem, this needs to go away. And so for us to be able to sit there and be like, oh, I see these sensations, it's okay, right? Giving it space to be there. I'm from Michigan where it's cold like 6 months out of the year and everybody's shivering like 6 months out of the year. And anybody that's ever grown up in a northern place, in a place that's frequently cold, knows this. And that is if you go outside and you shiver in your clothes, you are going to end up with neck pain, back pain. Your teeth are going to chatter. It's going to hurt. Okay. It's going to hurt after a while. And if you're only going to be outside for a couple of minutes, you're waiting for a bus, or if you are not backpacking where you need to worry about hypothermia, because most of the time we're not. But if you're waiting for the bus and you just let yourself be cold, and you don't tense up and resist the cold and shiver, you're fine. No pain later,
Mhm.
right? Every Michigander, I would like to think, knows that. And it's the same when it comes to anxiety. What resists persists, right?
Yeah, that's such a good example too, and I think it's so true that if we're in these situations, we start getting anxious. One of the situations we mentioned before this was I know for me, a lot of times when I was at parties and there was, like, big spreads of food, I would feel anxious, sometimes about talking to new people, but also about the food in front of me. Now, if I made that anxiety a problem with both of these situations, I would just totally shut down. Like, that's when I really wanna hide, I just wanna eat, I wanna leave the party, versus being
Mhm.
like, "You know what? I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now, but that's okay. I'm gonna make it through." And going back to kind of this original question of, like, how do we stop caring what think people think of us? I expected you to say that, and I totally think the same thing, that, like, it's part of our nature
Mhm.
where we're not supposed to feel disconnected with people and just be on our own. We're made for connection, we're made to be in tribes, so it's, like, a really natural thing. But I think also when we do care a lot about what people think about us, it's important to look at how we're thinking about ourselves too. Because I know whenever I'm the most self-critical and I'm having a lot of judgmental thoughts about myself and a lot of negative self-talk, that's when I'm imagining everyone else probably is too. So I
Mhm.
think it starts with us first and looking at, well, how do I feel about myself? And once we feel more confident, we just naturally think like we don't think so much about what other people are thinking about us because we are thinking very positively or at least neutral about ourselves.
Right, absolutely, and really, those are 2 skills, right? Like, being accepting of, okay, there's gonna be times where I like to say all the time, like, Beyoncé has awkward moments, y'all, and you're expecting you to have none, like, none, and everybody on earth has awkward moments, things like that. So, being accepting as well and knowing how to not criticize yourself, like you just said. So many of us is, and it's part of our culture as well, we're taught to use shame to moderate our behavior, right? Oh, I need to be better. I should have done this. I need to do more, right? Where it's the messaging that we're getting constantly all the time. Like, do more, be better, that was wrong, etc. So it's no wonder why some of us end up with these perfectionistic thoughts and things like that. But when we change that internal narrator from shame and self criticism to acceptance, that's where we can have an increase in self esteem. That's where we can also know, oh, if I say something quote unquote wrong that I'm like, don't stand by later, or if somebody does judge me, I know how to be kind to myself. And it sounds cheesy. I know it does, but it's revolutionary, honestly, in how it changes and shifts your life. And then, like you said, appreciating yourself, noticing the things that you do feel confident in, noticing your strengths, things like that. I like to say to my clients a lot of times that they are so self-aware. And but they're so self-aware of their problems. Can you be a little bit more self-aware of your strengths?
Mhm.
Right? Can you be self-aware of that as well? So, yeah, absolutely. Acceptance though is huge, especially when it comes to social anxiety, and I'm sure this relates to food in a lot of ways. Let me know how this feels. But even if you say something that you think is funny, that you enjoy saying, that feels good to you, somebody could still be like, wow, that was weird. Or somebody could still judge you for that.
Mhm.
There's no right or wrong answer in any social setting, so that's why self-acceptance is truly so important because it's a mixed bag out there, right? Not only are you gonna stumble over your own words, not only are you gonna mess up, but you're going to get mixed reactions from people. And you can be confident in yourself and your ability to speak and things like that, but if you don't know how to handle that rejection, if you don't know how to handle that moment and be kind to yourself, that's what makes it difficult and hard to move forward.
Right. This comes up a lot for people when they are making a new eating decision that they might not normally make. And what I mean by
Mhm.
that is, let's say they go over to their family's house and their family's Italian and they eat, and that's like their way of love. And then they, for the first time, say, like, I'm actually not hungry. I don't want to eat this food.
Mhm.
And they think these people are going to have a million thoughts about them. Oh my God, my mom's going to disown me. My dad's going to hate me. Or they decide to say no to their grandma's dessert because they're already full or they already had dessert that day. So sometimes there's a lot of resistance that comes up around, "Oh my gosh, like, what are they gonna think? Like, they're probably gonna hate me," but it's like, no, they could be having a million different thoughts. Some people could be thinking nothing at all, and just they're not even noticing that you're not going for the seconds that you normally have, or you're not having a slice of cake at the party. Some people could be thinking, "Oh my gosh, like, she's being so rude because she's not having any of my cake." Or some people could think it's a great thing. "Oh my gosh, I wish I had her self-control. I wish I wasn't eating any cake right now." And so you're right, it's like people are gonna have their opinions, they're gonna have your thoughts, but what matters most at the end of the day is if you like how you're showing up. So do you like how
Mhm.
you're eating at the party? Or are
Yeah.
you just trying to eat to please the other people? Do you like the jokes you're giving? Or are you just trying to tell this joke because you think someone will think it's funny or not funny? It's like, okay, checking in with ourselves first of how do we feel about this decision before worrying anything about what other people are thinking around it.
Mhm. Yeah, very well said.
And I love that you said to accept your mistakes too, and that even Beyonce, has slip ups, like embarrassing moments. Same thing with food of accepting that we're all imperfect humans, just like you said in your beautiful bio that you had, is like so key because I always say I am not teaching people to be perfect eaters. I'm teaching them to be natural eaters. And
Yeah.
natural eaters overeat sometimes. Natural eaters sometimes are like, whoops, I had one too many cookies, or it was Thanksgiving coming up and I had too much at Thanksgiving. Like it's gonna happen at times, but if you can accept yourself and say, you know what, sometimes this happens and just moves on, that's what's gonna prevent like the 3-day binges that happen for
Yeah.
people because then they say, "Oh my gosh, I ruined it all. Now I gotta keep going," and then it just ruins it more versus being like, "Whoopsie, like that happened. I'm human. Let's just move on and wait till my hunger comes up the next time, and then we'll figure out my best course from there." And I'm guessing that, it's same thing with friendships. You're like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I said that. I'm so stupid." That's when we withdraw inwards
Yeah.
and then we like don't wanna talk to anyone and then we remove ourselves further from the connection.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that example. Like, what a clear visual that you painted just there of I have a choice, right? This thing happened. It's already done. I overate a little bit. Do I beat myself up and feel like, shit for 3 days?
Mhm.
Or do I move forward? And I think, like, accept myself and then move forward and, like you said, try again next time. That's such a beautiful visual. And I think part of the reason why we beat ourselves up is because we think that it will prevent us from doing it again in the future, but it doesn't.
Mhm.
It just makes it worse. I think a really great example of this, from like a social example, is I had a client who was starting to feel a lot better, have more acceptance, put herself out there. And so she was like, I'm going to go present at work. And like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to offer to present this thing. Now, this was all hypothetical. This all happened before, but then the date started getting closer for this presentation, she started being like, "Oh my gosh, like, what did I do? What did I sign up for? And what if I mess up? If I mess up, I can never do this again." Do you hear it there in that
Mhm.
example, right? If I mess up, then I'm not allowed to do this again. That thought of and the beating yourself up, we think serves us because it will help us avoid mistakes in the future, quote unquote. We think that it's what it's doing, but really it just holds you back and keeps you stuck. So if that client would have kept that thought going forward, and if she did as all presentations do, like I think I'm a fantastic speaker. I cannot tell you one time that I have ever spoke perfectly, not once, right? There's going to be times where you stutter, say things wrong, get distracted. I don't know. Honestly, today's a perfect example while I'm right here not feeling the best. So happy to be here with you. But
And
today's a
yet you're
great
still
example.
showing up anyways though,
Yeah.
right? Like you're still here showing up, doing the thing. And that's what's helpful is because you're telling yourself, you know what, I can just do it. Even if it's not perfect, we're still gonna come here and we're still gonna do it. Versus, oh my gosh, I can't do it perfectly. I'm not gonna do it at all. And then all these beautiful people wouldn't be able to hear you today, right? So it's like seeing
Yeah.
where that thought leads us, and that will tell us if it's helpful or not.
Right, right. Because I would assume you've seen this with your people that if they do beat themselves up, right, after overeating, that there tends to also, over time of you doing that, you tend to not believe in yourself, right, to actually make a
Mhm.
change. And so then I'm just going to guess, but maybe the binges are like longer or they would last longer. And so the beating yourself up, it feels necessary. It feels like I will avoid mistakes in the future. It doesn't. And it does goes for anything ever, socializing, eating, literally any goal, any change you are wanting to make. Yeah.
Mhm. So good. So I would love to know, as you've been doing this work and making deeper connections and deepening your friendships, how has that impacted and changed your life? Like, why do you think it's so important that people do this work to learn how to connect better?
Yeah. I felt this pain of loneliness pretty frequently. I think, honestly, my entire life up until I learned about the science of connection, of like what drives social anxiety and of friendship. That pain just really takes you down. And I had, before creating my dream friendships and before applying like friendship science to my life, and, like, if you will, closing a bit of my friendship gap, I had great friends growing up. I did. I had fantastic people in my life that loved me, that were beautiful people, but I couldn't accept that or feel close to them because of my own block. So I also want to acknowledge that for people listening. So I'm not just talking about like having more friends, having more interaction with people, which is a benefit all on its own, especially for everybody. We live in a culture of isolation, like where it's normal to just put your head down, grind, do your thing, and not look up. Most of my clients are older than me, and they have looked up and they're like, "Where did all my friends go?"
Mhm.
So, I just want to acknowledge that, but the benefit of having friends and actually feeling connected to them, so not just having more friends, but meaningfully connective, supportive friendships that I can now accept, changes everything. It allows you to be more of who you are. Relationships are amplifiers. Being around people that you feel close with, that you can share all of your thoughts and feelings with, I think I work through things so much faster. Like, on a weekly basis, I feel energized, like, more than I did before. We also have this thing in our brains, which I found this to be really interesting, that when we are feeling sad, we're supposed to be seen. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you need to go, like, be codependent and, like, make sure you have a friend every time you're sad, or, like, somebody around every time you're sad. But part of the reason why we cry and why we shed tears are to let other people around us know, "Hey, come comfort me."
Hmm.
So
So beautiful.
this is so fundamental, right? It's so fundamental for these needs. So, to describe the change to you and what it has done for my life is, it feels like I took that like ball of loneliness and dropped it, and I feel bouncier, I feel lighter. And y'all, this is true too. I went through the hardest year of my life last year. There was a lot of circumstantial wild things that I never thought would happen, just like family stuff like that. And it still was not as bad as it was when I was lonely. And so there's that. And also, I really think I worked through things so much faster and had so much more peace and was able to regulate myself more often, and honestly just not go to that low place. Because also, we don't realize this, but our relationships are so much tied to our sense of self worth. And when I say that, a lot of people are really resistant to that because they're like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Like, no, I just decide. But think about how you define yourself. You define yourself as a good sister. You define yourself as funny, as smart compared to who, right? How do you have a measurement for that? Because you've seen other people in the world,
Mhm.
right? There's a study on women with breast cancer, and they found that women that had social support and had felt really meaningfully connected to people, like, were healed faster. It's huge. Friendship is huge. Our body also responds differently to stress. Like, it literally is not as impacted by stress when we
Mm.
feel meaningfully connected. So I could go on a huge rant about it. I'm trying to explain the magic of it, and I just really appreciate you asking the question, because sometimes people will ask me, "What are the health benefits? What are this?" But nobody's actually ever asked me, "What is the experience like?" So
Mhm.
I tell people in my life that, and sometimes my clients, like, how different the experience is, but I really appreciate you asking.
Yeah, and I wanted to connect it because it's everything you just said, that sounds exactly what people's lives is like when they stop binge eating. And
Mm.
same thing for me, it's like, I hear people all the time, they're on a consult with me, "I wanna lose weight, I wanna lose weight," and I'm like, "I get it," and they say, "Well, I wanna be healthy long term," and I'm like, "Yes, I understand all these things," but looking at your day-to-day experience of how much better your life will be, all of the peace you will feel, how you're better able to manage stress. When things get hard, you get out of them easier because you're able to connect with yourself and in other people around you. And so I think these two really go hand in hand that like when you deepen your connections and friendships, like that can also help you with food because you're a
Mhm.
stronger, more resilient person. And same thing when you work on your relationship with food, you're able to show up better in your friendships because you're a stronger and more resilient person there and are actually taking care of yourself. And so just seeing it's like more than just like, oh, it'd be nice to have some friends or it'd be nice to stop binge eating. But I really think these things are essential parts to our well-being. And I am also like obsessed. I love looking at the studies on loneliness. And my grandma, she lives in like the fanciest retirement community. I mean, she's more busy than me and everyone I know. Just so many fun events, but I can just see how much healthier and happier she is of that, not just long term, but just on the day to day too. And so, it's a really expensive retirement community, but for her, it's so worth it because that's what brings her joy in life. And so, investing in something like this, a coaching program, something where you can improve this part of your life is something that will really change everything for you in your day to day forever too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
So, where can everyone find you, Jewel?
Yeah, you can come hang out. Connectionwithjewel.com. Jewel is spelled like a gem, like a rock, Jewel. And yeah, we have a freebie that my team and I are both so proud of. So we used this at the largest women's conference in Michigan, in my state, to get the girls really excited, to get the girls that maybe, were a little high on the social anxiety spectrum, to get them feeling good so that way they could come and not just meet people, but really have a great time and make friends. So we had so much fun doing that for this women's conference that I was like, we need to make this available to everybody. So y'all can get those trainings. There's two of them, they go hand in hand, and they are how to belong at any event and how to turn people you meet into friends.
Mm.
And there's worksheets with them that help you really apply this to yourself and make it so you're not just learning the material, but being like, what does this look like for me? So y'all can get that at connectionwithjewel.com. We have that. You don't have to like sign up twice or anything. The freebies are grouped together. And again, we're really proud of that. And I'm also very grateful to my team for putting that together. So
That sounds amazing. Everyone go download that. I'm gonna download it. It sounds so awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Jewel. I really appreciate you, and, I'll talk to you next week, confident eaters.